Imagine being able to look inside the contents of an envelope halfway around the world, or track the movements of somebody, again, halfway around the globe. Well, that's what remote viewing is used for. Remote viewing has been used by the U.S. military for many years, and on this evening's Guys Radio, we're going to have one of the world's foremost remote viewing experts. His name is Lyn Buchanan. He's written this book, The Seventh Sense, and it's all about controlled remote viewing, and how this martial art, really, of the subconscious works. It's KCAA Radio. We're on at 8 p.m. Pacific Time, 102.3, 106.5 FM, 1050 AM. The show downloads, the podcast is going to be all over the internet starting tomorrow morning. iHeartRadio, Apple Podcasts, Spotify, we're everywhere. Guys Radio, join us. Thanks for your support. This is your host, Robert Manni.
It's Guy Radio. Here's your host, Robert Manni.
Welcome to Guys Radio. This is your host, Robert Manni, welcoming you to the show where men and women can be at their best and everyone wins. Guys Radio here on KCAA Radio in sunny Southern California. Well, we've got a great show for you today. I like to bring out different guests that have different information or come at information from a different angle or just expose things that most of us in our day-to-day work and lives don't think about because we're so busy earning a buck and taking care of our families and taking care of ourselves. And there's a lot of stuff out there that we may not be aware of that's real. And in some cases that's talked about, but may not be real. And I'm going to bring you the guests and you decide, hey, that's for me or maybe not. But I'm going to bring you people that are going to make you think. And I've got a great guest for you today. Let me set this up by saying, have you ever heard of remote viewing? Can you imagine if you could look into a situation or even a particular location in the past, the present, or the future? Well, did you know for the last 30 or 40 years, the U.S. military has been training remote viewers to be able to do exactly that. And our special guest on Guys Radio today is a fellow by the name of Lyn Buchanan. He's written this book called The Seventh Sense, The Secrets of Remote Viewing as Told by a Psychic Spy for the U.S. military. So basically what's been happening, the government has secretly trained the select core of military personnel in the art of remote viewing, the psychic ability to perceive the thoughts and experiences of others through the power of the human mind. It's amazing stuff. Lyn, our guest, he's a world-renowned expert on remote viewing. He's probably the most well-known remote viewer in the world, and he teaches also controlled remote viewing. He's going to tell the complete, candid story of his experiences. He worked in a clandestine U.S. Army intelligence group for over a decade, and they used their psychic abilities as a data collection tool during the Iran hostage crisis, the Chernobyl disaster, and even the Gulf War. He tracked down the movements of Saddam Hussein in Iraq when he was on the run and was eventually caught, Manuel Noriega in Nicaragua, and also Muammar Gaddafi, in Libya. Pretty amazing stuff. And he's also going to talk about somebody else that he remote viewed, a famous historical figure that everybody knows the name. So Lyn Buchanan is going to talk to us about that, and then you can determine, hey, is this something I want to study? Is this for real? I think it's for real because the government's using it. And there's books about it, and you can Google it, and there's a lot of information on it. But it's one of those topics that nobody ever talks about. But it's part of how espionage is working. We're doing it. The Russians are doing it. The Chinese are doing it. It's just, part of high-tech surveillance, if you will. But in this case, using psychic abilities and some algorithms and various data collection tools, these remote viewers they could look into an envelope in an office building halfway across the world and see what's inside. The really skilled ones, like Lyn, can actually get into the minds of an individual any place in the world. And also, in the past or in the future, they can predict, and they have, future headlines. It's wild stuff. Of course, like any other psychic ability, it's not 100% accurate. but they do a lot of tracking. There's a lot of data collection. And these teams of remote viewers are ranked according to their accuracy and their strengths and weaknesses in different areas. And they're hired as groups to solve crimes, to work with the government, to work with corporations. It's pretty wild stuff. So we're going to have a great show. Guys Radio, our special guest, Lyn Buchanan. Real quick, what else is going on? Well, this is my first winter in sunny Southern California. It's not sunny every day, though, in the winter here in Southern California, but it's pretty nice. When I get up here in San Diego, it's high 40s, and then it creeps up into the high 60s pretty much every day so far. And we get some clouds, and once in a blue moon, we get some rain, which is always actually needed and welcomed. And that's it. And by the end of the day, usually the sun breaks through, but sometimes not, but usually it does. And I have no complaints. The weather here is just absolutely ridiculous. It's great. I love it. And after many, many long, cold, dreary, dark winters on the East Coast, this is it's welcome stuff. You know what? If it's in the 60s, great. Who can complain about the 60s? It's just fantastic. It's never, so far what I've also learned here about the weather in San Diego, which is, again, amazing, is it never gets too hot and it never gets too cold. So it's always very temperate. It's always very nice, and there's no humidity. So it's wonderful. So anyhow, that's my little story there. Also, I've been following this baseball scandal, and it's just amazing. I played baseball for many, many years. I love the game. I still consider it America's pastime. I know football is more popular now. But when I hear about using technology, management using technology to help get an advantage over the other team, I'm just major thumbs down. I actually think the 2 championships with the Astros and the Red Sox should be vacated, that nobody should win. It's just my opinion. I know a lot of people will have a problem with that, but to me, there's gamesmanship. And in baseball, you know, the scuffed baseballs that the pitchers use, where they load up the ball with spit or whatever, and sometimes they slide high, and you can pick off signals on the field. That's all part of the game, and it's all monitored by umpires. When you use technology off the field and it's being relayed to the dugout and then maybe even to electronic devices that players are wearing, though it has not been proven, but when you have such an elaborate scheme pulled together, management approved, that's bad news, and that's not gamesmanship. That's flat out cheating. So hopefully the awareness of this issue will clean up the game because baseball is a wonderful, wonderful game. And I hope it continues to thrive, and I hope we can put this behind us. So anyhow, my 2 cents about baseball, because I just absolutely love the game. I've been a Yankees fan my entire life. I'm a Padres fan also now. And I actually went out to the Fan Fest with my wife and son a week ago. And it was a spectacularly beautiful day. And they opened up the stadium. You could go out on the field, walk around, have a catch, take pictures, meet the players, sign autographs. They had all these other activities, and it was free. And they didn't try to squeeze money out of you. Everything was on the up and up. It was really nice. They did a great job. Congratulations, Padres, on that. And I'm going to attend some games and bring my son. And I think they'll have a decent team. They're a work in progress, but it should be fun. So anyhow, Guys Radio, your host, Robert Manni. We've got a great show. Our special guest is Lyn Buchanan. We'll be with you right away. Here we go. Okay, Guys Radio, your host, Robert Manni. As I mentioned, we have a very special guest. His name is Lyn Buchanan, and he is probably the world's foremost expert in CRV, or controlled remote viewing. Remote viewing, and Lyn will explain this to us. His name is Lyn Buchanan, is really being able to see other areas, other things, regardless of time, in other places. And it's a skill that's taught, that's learned, and there's some mathematics to it. And it's something that's used in a lot of government agencies and stuff. So we'll get into that, and Lyn will be able to share with us whatever he can that's not classified. So welcome to Guys Radio, Lyn Buchanan. I'm so thrilled you're here.
Well, thank you for inviting me. It's an honor. Thank you.
Well, we're going to talk about Lyn's book. Your book is called The Seventh Sense. I know you have other books, but this one to me is your seminal book, The Secrets of Remote Viewing, as told by a quote-unquote psychic spy for the U.S. military. So it's really interesting stuff. So For our listeners, Lyn, who may not be aware, because what we do on Guys Radio, we bring out a lot of information, new stuff for people to consider because they're busy with their everyday lives and they may not have the time to consider some of these things that are going on around them right now. And also, I believe that people have a lot more power than they think they have. And in this case, I think you'll definitely prove it with our discussion on remote viewing. So for our listeners, what is remote viewing? What is controlled remote viewing? And how did you get started in it?
Oh, okay. There's three questions there.
Yep.
Remote viewing these days is the new age word for psychic. Controlled remote viewing, on the other hand, is actually more of a martial art, and it's trained as a martial art. The idea with controlled remote viewing is that your subconscious has some kind of ability to pick up psychic and intuitive information, but it puts it into your body. And then you read your body's responses.
When did this begin, this practice of either remote or controlled remote viewing begin? Who started it? Why did it become popular? How was it incorporated into the military, etc.? What's kind of the background of it? Because most people don't even know the terms.
Yeah. Well, just to finish that other part up, it gets to where we can read documents in safes locked halfway around the world and all that. The martial art enhances. It began actually in Russia. The Russians actually did have this first. And they were spying on the United States back in the 60s. And in the late 60s, a man named Penkovsky defected or tried to defect from Russia and brought the documents over, saying that they had basically psychic spies. And we were losing our information and couldn't find out where it was going. And so everybody had to laugh about psychic spies, but the intelligence effort doesn't do that. Mm-hmm. They said, hey, if this works, we need to get it and spy right back at them. You know?
Yep. But was this, something like this, though, maybe it was started to be incorporated for espionage in the 60s, but was remote viewing, or as you refer to it as being psychic, that's something that goes way, way, way back. I'm wondering what the tipping point was to turn it into something that becomes almost weaponizing it.
Oh, Adolf Hitler. Adolf Hitler had a unit called Dr. Grunbaum, and they were doing studies on psychic things, but also on the martial arts, on the intuition and all that. And they had actually developed psychic spying. Well, when when World War II ended, the U.S., France, and England grabbed all their nuclear scientists and their rocket scientists and all that. They didn't care about all the psychic stuff. Mm-hmm. Well, Russia did. And Russia took it and developed it into a spying technique. Then in the 60s, we found out about it. And so we said, well, if they've got it, we got to have it too.
So let's take it even a step further back. I mean, I've got to think that this capability, all humans have some type of psychic capabilities, and this goes way back. I'm wondering if the Roman army used any type of psychic, powers or whatever, or just people in general, because if it was just, we're talking about Hitler, which is 1940. He didn't invent it, so it had to come from somewhere. I don't mean to belabor that one point. I'm just curious.
No, that's a good question. Dr. Grunbaum means Dr. Green Tree. And Hitler, as much as he used the Jews as the enemy so he could rise to power, was very interested in Hebrew mysticism. And the central thing of the Kabbalah is the green tree.
Right.
And so his Dr. Grunbaum, Dr. Green Tree, was actually based on the study of the Kabbalah, the Jewish mysticism.
Wow.
And so, this has been all through history.
Okay. You were, as a kid, everybody has different, everybody has psychic abilities.
Yeah.
But I think different people have the tuning up, the dials turned higher for some and others, but you can develop that. So you had some instances in your life when you were young that you realized that you had some psychic abilities. And then when you were in the Army, you kind of got pulled into this unit. Tell us the story of how that happened.
Okay. Growing up, when I was around 12 years old, I started getting PK events. That is, you've heard of the what do you call them? The children that have these when they get emotional, things fall off shelves and all that.
Mm-hmm. I don't know that.
I forget what it's called right now. I wound up being one of those, but it wasn't just emotional. When I found out that I could do it, I started trying to develop it and all that. And my life in many ways parallels Charlie Brown's. I was trying to impress the cute redheaded girl one day. I showed her one of these things that I could do. And she was very impressed and went home and told her father, the Pentecostal minister. And the next afternoon, he and three of his deacons met me on the sidewalk as I was going home from school. He asked me to show them, and when I did, they slammed me down to the sidewalk and started screaming for Satan to come out of me and all this, just scared me half to death. And so for the next years, I tried to suppress this. Mm-hmm. But one day there in Augsburg, Germany, when I was in the military at the listening station in Augsburg, Germany, I was given a demonstration of a new computer program that I had written that would tie the computers of 12 different countries together to share intelligence information. And this other sergeant had wanted to do that program and give the
he sabotaged, as I recall in the book, right?
Yeah. So he sabotaged it, and when he did, I got flaming mad. And when I did, basically the intelligence computers of Europe
shut down.
Fried. They shut down.
Wow.
And for a time that's still classified. We had no intelligence, and
so let me interrupt you. So, Lyn, when you were in the Army, did they know of your psychic abilities, and do they recruit? Is there active recruiting for people with psychic abilities for the military? And if so, at what age do they do that?
Not that I know of. They quit telling me things when I retired, Mm-hmm. But no, at the time there wasn't. However, there was a General Stubblebine who was in charge of the Intelligence and Security Command for the Army, and he was interested in this. One of his captains happened to be at that presentation, saw what happened, and reported it to him. So a few months later, he came out to Augsburg and pulled me in, and I was standing in front of him. I, didn't know what I was in trouble
mm-hmm.
for.
Right.
And he got up in my face and scowled, and he said, "Did you kill my computers with your mind?" And I could just see my great-grandchildren still paying for computers. And I said, "Yes, sir, I did." And he said, "Far effing out if I ever got it done for you." And so anyway, he took me back to D.C. and wanted me to be the part of a new unit that would mentally be able to destroy enemy computers, mm-hmm. so that we could make their missiles drop into the sea or go back and turn around and go back at them or whatever, and read the information that was in their computers and mess it up and them.
All right.
Congress would not fund that. So then he took me out to Fort Meade and put me into the remote viewing unit.
It's interesting reading your book, and again, Skies Guys Radio, your host, Robert Manni, our special guest, Lyn Buchanan, the world's foremost expert in controlled remote viewing. His book is called The Seventh Sense, The Secrets of Remote Viewing, as told by a psychic spy for the U.S. military. It sounds like, from reading the book, Lyn, that the military had a hard time with the funding. It always got passed around. And there was not a lot of cohesiveness to it. So you were always working for somebody else. You'd be in one study, and then the funding would run out, and then they'd come up with another study. But it seemed like the military had challenges getting their arms wrapped around this thing. And so I would assume that's still the case. For our listeners, the way you were describing at the opening, how it works. So basically, let's have a scenario. I'm a remote viewer, and I work for the military. Yeah. You give me an assignment. You want to find out, because you did this, audience. Lyn tracked Saddam Hussein before his capture. So how does it work? You're given what? You don't know that, they didn't give you the name Saddam Hussein, or they did, or they give you coordinates. It's numeric, and then you go through this process. And how does it all work? And how did that one work?
They try to keep you away from logical thinking. And so they would give me the coordinates for the mission, which would be like 970403. Mm-hmm. And each of these tasks would have several questions. And so it would be 970403, question 3, what's the answer? And if they gave you any information at all, it would be the target is a location. Mm-hmm. That's it.
Okay.
And then you write those numbers down, physically write them down, because it is a martial art. And then you start getting information about the location. And
how do you do that? I'm just playing like I'm riding in a car with you, and I want to, so forgive me for interrupting, but how do you get that information?
You say, in the beginning, you look at your scribble and you say, I don't know what the target is, but there's land here. They say, okay, describe the land.
How do you know there was land, though?
Because that scribble.
Okay, so it's almost like a blending of your subconscious with your conscious mind into an automatic writing?
It's the blending of your subconscious to your body.
Okay.
It is like the wax on, wipe off.
Okay.
It becomes a physical response.
Got it.
To inward awareness. And then they say, okay, describe the land. Well, by that time in the training, you have learned to use other physical responses. And so then you say, oh, okay, the land, I don't know where it is and all, but I feel it, and it's sandy, because you feel sandy, and it's warm, and you start describing the physical aspects of it. Mm-hmm. And then you say, okay, and then you get sort of a relationship to it. It's a growing process. You get a relationship, and you say, okay, and over here to the side, there's something man-made. They say, okay, move to the man-made and describe. You start describing that. Okay, and then you describe it. And as you go through these, like sometimes a couple of hours, it's a slow process. You describe it, and then when you've got a full description of it, they can task a spy in the sky satellite to look in the area where it is and see exactly what you described and say, there he is.
Okay. So you can also do the same type of things for working with police, finding missing children, or whatever. So you also described in your book, Lyn, about you had your own out-of-body experiences where you left your physical body, you can see your physical body, and you could do things like put your hand in your non-physical body, like through a wall. The real self was that. Your physical body is a physical body, the 3D body. Explain how that worked for you, and then why that is, what that has to do with remote viewing and your skill set. Does that have any kind of correlation?
No, it has no correlation with the controlled remote viewing. And actually, I've never had that experience. I've heard about it. But in controlled remote viewing, there comes a time when you get so focused on what your body is telling you, and your body is receiving so much information that it's as though you don't see the room you're in anymore. You see the target as though you're there. You can't tell that you're not there.
Mm-hmm.
You're not there.
Okay.
But you can't tell that. And on that, like if you say, okay, I'm going to walk through this wall and see what's on the other side, it is so real that when you try to walk through the wall, you're going to hit your face. And it'll hurt, And so we have ways to call you back and say, move to the other room, and then you move to the other room and develop that again.
Got it.
But it's totally different from an out-of-body experience.
Okay, but you have had out-of-body experience that you described
in
the book.
I never have.
Okay.
Not a real out-of-body experience.
But didn't you mention something about you can see your hand from afar? All right.
Oh, yeah. But I think that was more of a dreamlike state, but it was very realistic. But
okay. All right. Some other examples. You were asked to, I believe, look for a headline in the future and upcoming weekend, and you kind of identified Chernobyl, the disaster there, but you were off by a couple of days or something like that. So technically, it's considered incorrect, but you were correct in that you saw this problem occurring, right?
Well, this is one of the military things.
Okay.
The task was to describe the headlines for that weekend.
Okay.
Chernobyl happened that weekend, and I picked up on Chernobyl and described it completely, described the causes of it and all that. But the Russians kept it secret until, I think, Tuesday, when they had to break the news.
Right.
So I had described Chernobyl, when it happened, and the date that it happened, which was that weekend. And so I had done that completely and had a successful target. But the task was what's going to be in the headlines that weekend. And so I got a 0 for my thing because I didn't follow the task.
You also tracked down through CRV Gaddafi and also, I think, Noriega. And also you kind of got into the heads of these people, and you warn us in the book that it's a real skill. You really have to be careful when you're getting inside people's minds because you could kind of get lost in there. So talk to us a little bit about finding these guys like Gaddafi and Noriega, and also you knew what Saddam Hussein. You got into his head, and you were like, "This guy's totally crazy." So how did you do it, and how do you protect yourself so you don't get lost in there?
Okay, this wanted to be one of my strengths. Every remote viewer has strengths and weaknesses. This was one of my strengths, was accessing people mentally, and so you do it just by being tasked to do it. If they find out that you're good at it, they'll say, okay, do a plans and intentions or do a personality profile or whatever. And you just access that person at the subconscious level and find out their plans and intentions. And so, I was tasked to do that quite often. And so how do you do it? Well, it's what you learn in the process.
Well, when you got into like Saddam Hussein's head, what was that experience like? Oh, it seeing the world through his eyes then?
Yeah, basically. Yeah. Mm-hmm. And the guy was crazy. I mean, in his mind, he was an evil. In his mind, God wanted him to do this, and he was serving God's purposes. Mm-hmm. And so, to go kill millions of people, that's what God wanted him to do, And the guy was crazy.
How about Gaddafi? What was the difference between Gaddafi and Hussein from your experience?
Gaddafi was just plain nuts.
So he got crazy and nuts, right?
That's right. I mean, for no purpose at all. He was just plain nuts, But
now, when you were tracking him, where did you find him? Where was he?
Which one, Gaddafi?
Gaddafi, yeah.
Okay, on the Gaddafi thing, they tasked me to with the location.
Okay.
And I didn't track Gaddafi's location. The location that they had tasked was his home, and they wanted a description of his home at a certain day in the future. Mm-hmm. And what I found was a living room with a white couch and this beam coming down across the thing, and the home was just in shambles. And I found out later that what I had told them was that their attack would be successful. Mm-hmm. And on the basis of that, I was told they went ahead and had the attack on Gaddafi's home. Right. Gaddafi wasn't there, mm-hmm. but by that time I had learned to do what they tasked me to do.
Of course. Yeah.
And so I described his home. Mm-hmm. It was in shambles, so they went ahead with the thing. Okay.
Now, in your, as a personal note, in your day-to-day life, do you use remote viewing just in, I don't know, going to the supermarket or like, I wonder what my son's doing or whatever?
Like I say, it's a martial art, and so it becomes second nature. Mm-hmm. You can't get away from it. Yeah. And so...
what type of things can you see then, Lyn? What type of things can you ascertain?
Things like just recently, I was walking out of Walmart, and all of a sudden just backed up very quickly. Mm-hmm. And sure enough, a car went speeding by. It would have hit me, Now I had no idea why I backed up, but I've learned your mind says back up.
So is it part intuition then? Is that connected to your intuition in any sense?
But it's intuition connected to your body for physical responses. Yeah.
Okay. So like when we're talking now and we're having a remote interview, can you pick up anything on me using your remote viewing?
Oh, I could, but it's the remote view. The controlled remote viewing is a written process. Mm-hmm. So it's not, stick the envelope to your head. And
okay, so you'd have to sit down and do some work. What could you find out about me if you did remote viewing, just for our audience? I mean, I'm not saying tell them what you found, because you haven't found anything, but if you were going to remote view me, what would you be able to find out?
Let me say that once you learn and get efficient at controlled remote viewing, mm-hmm. there are no more secrets.
Okay. So you get inside people's heads and you kind of know what they're thinking, what their tendencies are, what their likes and dislikes are, all that stuff?
Their plans are and all that. And now you were talking earlier about the dangers of it. Mm-hmm. If I get into your head and you have some kind of thing that is eating away at your mind, somebody's done you wrong and all that, and I start thinking, oh, he's right, and I start feeling your anger, mm-hmm. get into your head and observe. I don't get into your head, and if I start sharing your feelings, then I can get sucked in. Mm-hmm. And pretty soon I come out of that session and I'm mad at somebody.
Got it. How about, what's your experience with the government working with ETs?
Okay. I have to give this caveat right up.
Okay.
We were never officially tasked with any ETs or...
Okay. I'm saying hypothetically then, let's talk.
Okay. But that's worded carefully. We were never officially tasked to do it. Okay. Yeah, they're here. We found 5 bases here on Earth, and we actually got moderate amount of feedback on it, real life feedback that they're there, their activities and all that. And after I got out of service, okay, mm-hmm. I was tasked to do a paper on the comparison of ET psychic ability with human psychic ability. Mm-hmm. I was given access to a lot of the stuff that never made it into Project Blue Book and all that. And so after the study, both with the remote viewing and studying the documents, I was able to say, okay, psychic-wise, you can divide the ETs into 4 groups, friendly and unfriendly, mm-hmm. and in each of those, psychic and non-psychic.
Okay.
And studying the records, I found out that the non-psychic, non-friendly ones don't come here. They don't like us. They don't want to be around us. They don't have anything to do with us. The friendly, non-psychic ones are here doing trade, and we have mm-hmm. trade agreements with them, and that I know from other sources. The friendly psychic ones want us to develop our psychic ability. The non-friendly psychic ones just want us wiped off the planet. They want us killed. And I couldn't figure out why that dichotomy. And one of the cases I studied made it click. And that was an abduction experience. The ETs who are psychic have much stronger psychic ability than we have, much stronger. Mm-hmm. But they have to be right over you. I mean, the ship comes up right over you, and that's when you are frozen and all that. They have no range.
Okay.
We are very weak in our psychic ability, but using our psychic ability, we can see across the universe as easily as we can see across the room. If we develop our psychic ability to that strength, when we get out into the universe, we will be a major power in the universe. And that's why our friends wanted to help us do that. And that's why our enemies just want us to.
Fascinating. Yeah. Okay, it's Guys Radio. Your host, Robert Manni. Our special guest is world's foremost expert on remote viewing and controlled remote viewing, Lyn Buchanan. We're talking about his book, The Seventh Sense, The Secrets of Remote Viewing as Told by a Psychic Spy for the U.S. Military. How about time travel? Because can you, in your remote viewing, you mentioned looking at a headline in the future. How is, tell us about going back in time, going forward in time. Can events be impacted, timeline differences, things like that?
Yeah. The training in controlled remote viewing has you moving in time just exactly the same as moving in space. Like they can give you the cue, move forward 10 yards and describe what's there. A remote viewer is sitting there working their session, and you can say, move forward 10 years and describe what's there. And they say, okay, and they do it. The subconscious mind has no problem at all moving through time. The conscious mind does, but the subconscious mind doesn't.
Okay. Training, when you teach, you have a training school.
Yeah.
What is the process? How many levels are there? How long does it take? What are some of the attributes that you look for in potential CRV experts? The
candidates, I'd say. The number of levels that are taught to the civilian world is we teach 7 levels. There are actually 18. We teach 7 in the civilian world. The process, what we look for in a student is a person who will practice, mm-hmm. who will do the wipe on, wash on, wipe off. Without the practice, you don't learn it.
Okay.
And, so a person who's dedicated will do the practice and will follow the rules of the simple, remote viewing rules. if they have that, they're going to develop their ability. Everyone seems to have some intuitive ability to different degrees, but also we're interested in a person who will keep data, because that way we're able to find out their strengths and their weaknesses.
Okay.
If they do that, we can use them in teams and task everybody toward their strengths. And let's say we have, there's a detective now who uses 25 professional level controlled remote viewers, and she will task each one toward their strength. Overall, they may have an average accuracy rate of, say, 75%.
Mm-hmm.
But by tasking each one toward their strength, she can get over 95% accuracy in the project.
Okay, so do some law enforcement individuals study remote viewing so they can learn how to work with other remote viewers and get the most out of the practice?
Oh, yeah, that's part of who we teach, yeah.
Okay. So is there an age limitation to people who you teach?
Actually, yes, because we live in a country that is so litigious. Mm-hmm. If a person is a minor, they make excellent remote viewers.
Right.
But I won't teach them without their parents there, without their permission.
How about on the other side, the older folks?
Oh no.
Okay, it's cool.
No problem. Okay. No.
Now, how long does each level take for a student to finish? And then how much time should they take between levels, if any?
We teach levels 1, 2, and 3 in the basic course, and then we ask people to practice generally for about a year, and practice hard for about a year, and then they become masters at those 3 levels. They come back for the intermediate course, and we teach them stages 4 and 5. And once you've gone through stage 5, listen, you're ready to work professionally.
Okay. Do you help your students get jobs?
I'm sorry?
Do you help them get placed?
Oh, yeah. No.
Okay. Can people make a living doing this?
I'm sorry?
Can people make a living remote viewing?
No, not really. Not in this day and age, no.
Okay. More of a side hustle type of thing?
It's all done. You do non-disclosure agreements. Nobody knows you're doing it, and you can't tell anybody what you're doing.
But can you make enough money to sustain yourself?
You can make money at it, generally, if you work for a project manager who uses a team.
Got it. Okay.
Yeah.
Now,
but the stage 6,
okay.
The stage 6 and 7, mm-hmm. That's really, really neat stuff. But you don't really need that. So,
okay. You had mentioned a great story where you were doing some remote viewing and you were getting the same kind of assignments over and over again, and then you got a different assignment. Tell us about that, and it was a very special individual, because I think our listeners would love that story, Lyn.
Like I was saying earlier, one of my fortes, one of my strengths is that of accessing people mentally. They had me accessing Saddam Hussein repeatedly, Gaddafi and other leaders, and always the bad guys, because they were the threats. And it was wearing me down. And I went in one day and I said, look, give me Mother Teresa, give me Bozo the Clown, do something, give me a break. And the guy said, you're a soldier, do your damn job and suck it up, Okay, yes, sir. And so then I guess a couple of weeks later, the monitor came in. He said, okay, we're doing a personality profile today. I wish he had done plans and intentions, because that's deeper, but personality profile. And I got started on the session, and just immediately I said, look, this guy's innocent. Whatever evil you think this guy did, he didn't do it. You're giving me the wrong guy. And the monitor said, just do your task and do it. By the end of the session, I felt like I was glowing inside, And my final summary was basically, I had given a description of the person and all, and I said, whatever evil you think this guy did, he didn't do it. This is an innocent. Mm-hmm. And so the monitor opened the envelope, took the tasking paper out.
Before you tell us who that is, how was the person, you were next to that person, right? And how was the person dressed and what did they look like?
Believe it or not, he was a short little guy, looked extremely Jewish. He was wearing a business suit, and he never said anything to me. But I'll tell you afterwards what I learned from him by accessing him at a subconscious level. But he was wearing a modern business suit, which kind of surprised me once I found out who he was. But he was just this short, little, very Jewish-looking guy, and that was it, And so anyway, when they opened the envelope, the director had just handwritten a word on the paper, Jesus.
Wow. And what was your reaction?
Well, all of a sudden it made sense. What had happened in the session was basically he never said anything to me. He turned around and he smiled at me. And basically I understood that no matter what evil thing I had done, he's seen worse. No matter what good thing I've ever done, he's seen better. And he didn't care. He smiled at me, and I knew that he accepted me just like I was.
And I think another thing you mentioned, it's a fantastic story, was that he was the only person you were remote viewing who actually turned, and most people don't see you there, and he kind of acknowledged you. That's pretty different, right?
Oh, totally different. There was only one other time when that happened, and it was when we were looking for the Chinese remote viewers, and I was doing a session on them, and one of them actually picked up on me at the time, and
wow.
And we saw each other in the session. Yeah.
And then what happened? So you see each other. What did you guys do?
She turned around and ran. She turned around and then my monitor, I reported to the monitor. She turned around and disappeared. And he said, okay, move to the point where she was working and describe. And all of a sudden, I was at their remote viewing unit and described the place, described the layout of the place, described where it was and everything else. And that's where we located the Chinese remote viewing unit.
That is an amazing story. Lyn, you're fantastic, and people don't realize that you've been through and witnessed history. What have you learned from all your experiences remote viewing about humanity that you didn't know before?
I think that when you talk about most of humanity, everybody is good. At least they see themselves as good. For example, Saddam Hussein, he was only doing God's work by killing everybody. Mm-hmm. And so in his mind, he was a good person. And accessing people, they tend to, horrible things are done in the name of God. But also, people tend to make excuses or reason out why the things they do are actually good, And I think everybody wants to be good. They just don't know how.
Okay, that's a fair point. Interesting. So our special guest, Guys Radio, Lyn Buchanan, his book, The Seventh Sense, The Secrets of Remote Viewing, is told by a psychic spy for the U.S. military. Lyn, tell our listeners where they can learn more about you, where your school is, website, all that kind of stuff.
Okay, I'm now teaching courses over the internet. It's a self-paced course, but we have weekly webinars with the students, so we get face-to-face time. And the my site is crviewer.com, and it has links to the courses I give, but it also has over 450 targets that you get a number and you see what you can get. You write it down, and it tells you how to do the written thing, and then you call that number back up, and it shows you the target.
Great.
And we do not track anybody.
Got it.
So,
okay. Well, great interviews. So much fascinating information. I could go on and on. Thank you so much, Lyn Buchanan, for being our guest on Guys Radio. Great job.
Good. We'll see you then. Thank you very much.
Robert Manni's The Guy's Guide to Love is a fast-paced tale of flawed men and savvy women competing for love, sex, power, and money in the city where they play for keeps. It's the men's successor to Sex and the City. The Guy's Guide to Love is a sexy romp through the fast-moving, high-stakes world of Madison Avenue. Available now on Amazon and wherever books are sold. There's never been a better time for men to be whoever they want to be, yet it's never been less clear who men really are. Guys Guy Radio, starring author Robert Manni, is on KCAA every Wednesday at 8 p.m. Whether it's relationships, sex, wellness, or spirituality, join Robert as he interviews the experts about how men and women can be at their best. Guys Guy Radio. Better men, better world.
All right. What an interesting discussion with Lyn Buchanan, probably the world's foremost renowned remote viewer and controlled remote viewer. I think he's still teaching, and he has a lot of other of his teaching tree, if you will, who's out there teaching remote viewing. So if you want to learn more about it, just go to his website or Google remote viewing. You'll be able to find out everything about it. What did we learn? Well, we learned that remote viewing is happening, whether you like it or not. It's happening, and it's people are psychic. It's just how much of our psychic abilities do we take the time to develop? And so the other thing that I picked up, I think, is that he considers it a martial art, which I find very interesting. And also, when I spoke to Lyn, then off camera, if you will, about, well, what did Jesus have to say? And he said, unsurprisingly, telepathically to Lyn, was that he was non-judgmental. He basically had communicated to Lyn that I've seen better, I've seen worse. There's no judgment for you. You're a human like everybody else. We're all the same. So that's a great message, and I hope we all keep that in mind, and also keep in mind the fact that although we're all humans, we're also all divine beings. So think of everybody you see that way, and I think, at least it happens for me, it made my life a lot better once I started to see my fellow man as all being equal, all being divine. Okay, Guys Radio, we're here on KCAA every Wednesday evening at 8 p.m. Pacific Time, 102.3, 106.5 FM, 1050 AM. We're also all over the internet. We're on Apple Podcasts, iTunes, Stitcher, Spreaker, Spotify, TuneIn Radio, Blog Talk Radio, CastBox, KCA. You can stream the show on there. You can also go to my website, robertmanni, manni.com, Google Podcasts. Everything with Guys started with my source material, the novel, The Guy's Guide to Love. If you want to support the show, please rate, review, and subscribe on iTunes/Apple Podcasts. You can also catch me, Robert Manni, all over social media. I thank you for supporting the show. We're approaching our 400th show. It's been a blast. We're growing and growing. We got a whole bunch of really cool guests coming up. Thank you again. I love doing the show. I love being with you, and I hope I'm helping out. So, Guys Radio, and as I always like to say, guys, finish first.
It's Guys Guy Radio.